What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Monday, March 25th, 2019 here. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about today. There is so much going on. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments and questions. And what can I say? It's Mueller time. And obviously last Friday, the Robert Mueller investigation ended. The report was turned over. William Barr sent a summary out there, and basically, as the independent media has been saying all along, it was a nothing burger on a gluten-free bun. And I think the independent media can sort of get together and have a hearty "we told you so." And we were right. The corporate media was wrong. All these Democratic politicians were wrong. All of these people who got up on the corporate media and said, oh, there's lots of evidence of collusion. Oh, there's tons of evidence of collusion. Oh, there's evidence all over. No, there wasn't. The Mueller report said they found no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians, and they found no evidence of obstruction, although they wouldn't say they were convinced obstruction did not take place. But William Barr has basically said if there's no evidence of obstruction, there's no obstruction charges. And so the Democrats are wailing and screaming and gnashing their teeth and demanding the release of the full report in this desperate hope that there's something in there they can still grasp onto as a means to impeach Donald Trump. But this is a huge scandal. It's a huge scandal for the Democrats. It's a huge scandal for the FBI and the Department of Justice. It's a scandal for Loretta Lynch, for James Comey. It's a huge scandal. It's even reached up to President Obama. And it's a huge scandal for the American corporate media. So it was all a lie. It was all just this huge, gigantic lie. And they came up with this thing. The Hillary campaign came up with this just a few days after Donald Trump won the 2016 election because they wanted an explanation of how Hillary Clinton could have lost a rigged election, which she did. And she didn't want to admit she was that unpopular with the American people. Oh, it had to be the Russians, had to be the Russians. And not a word from Hillary yet on any of this, but I'm sure probably the ashtrays are flying up there in Massachusetts right about now. So, yeah, Mueller is done. The report unambiguously states there was no collusion or obstruction. He was allowed to follow every single lead. He was unfettered in this investigation of incredible scope and depth, and he wandered far outside his original mandate of collusion. But every single indictment he actually got had nothing to do with it. So Mueller did not charge any Americans with collusion, coordination, or criminal conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia. The special counsel also considered whether members of the Trump campaign coordinated, which is a much lower standard defined as an agreement, tacit or express, with Russian election interference activities. They didn't find anything there either. So it was pure propaganda from the Democrats, from the Hillary Clinton campaign, because she just couldn't accept that she lost the 2016 election. And we're seeing a lot of reactions start to come on out. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, they're still going to go after Trump. Okay, forget the Mueller report. We're going to start another investigation. We'll find something. We're going to get this man. And they're out there, of course, urging the release of the full report. They think there may still be something in there they can use. Even Trump wants the full report to come out. It's going to be up to William Barr, but everybody's saying full report, come on out. And Trump is saying, I know there's nothing in there. and there's a lot of shrieking going on. But amazingly enough, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is already out there kind of saying maybe it's time to get over this whole Russiagate situation, because the more they push on this, Robert Mueller may have just gotten Donald Trump reelected in 2020. All right, we're going to take a phone call now. Chance in West Virginia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike, did you ever begin to wonder if, number one, this was a distraction from the get-go, this Mueller investigation, or, number two, the controllers said to him, look, you play ball with us, we'll drop all this, and he's in their pocket. Did you ever think of those two possibilities, maybe?
Yeah, and I pretty much dismissed them. This was a vindictive, bitter Hillary Clinton and the Democrats and the deep state just desperate to get rid of Donald Trump because they couldn't trust him not to investigate certain things like the Clinton Foundation. And now the gloves are off. The GOP is going to go on the offensive, and we're already starting to see that. So...
Yeah, but Mike, these guys are good at what they do with their psyops. You know that.
No, they're not. Look at all the failures they've had in the past. You know, look at the psyop, for example, around Sandy Hook or Saddam's nuclear weapons. They keep falling flat on their face. And I think,
pretty good at
yeah, I'm pretty
sure
good
at fooling the American
Bay of
people.
Pigs.
They're pretty good at fooling the American people, though.
Not anymore. Not in the age of the internet and the independent media. That's the dynamic that has changed. That's why they're so angry and unhappy. They're still trying to play the game by the rules that worked 20, 30, 40 years ago. They don't work any longer. And that's the reason Hillary lost in 2016. She had the corporate media totally on her side. Had the election been held 20 years earlier, she would have won, because there would have been no voices out there reminding everybody about all the scandals that follow the Clintons around.
Yeah, but listen, don't be surprised if you hadn't heard the last from her. Something tells me she might appear to run again in 2020.
Oh, I'm worried that she's going to try and do that. And but of course, this is going to be a major setback for any plan she has of running again in 2020.
They'll come up with another psyop. They'll work around this. They're good at what they do. Okay, Mike, thank you now.
All right, Chance, we're going to let you go here. They're not as good as they like to think they are. I mean, look at how, COINTELPRO blew up in their faces. Look at how Watergate blew up in the face of Richard Nixon. These guys are not as clever as they think they are. They get into these top positions at the intelligence agencies or the government, and they think they're special people. And really, they're where they are because they're willing to do things other moral people will not. That doesn't make them better people. They do mess up a lot. Okay, we're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network, and we're going to go back to the phones to Joe in California. Joe, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. I have a question related to the Mueller investigation. First, I had researched yesterday that the total cost of the Mueller investigation was $25 million. I don't know if you've heard the same.
I heard $12 million. We may never find out.
Okay, yeah. I'd seen $25 million, and it's sad. That aspect of it is sad because that money could have been spent a lot more productively. For example, it could have been sent to Israel.
Point taken there. I would have liked to have seen that $25 million spent on an investigation into the Clinton Foundation.
Absolutely. Well, that'll never happen. Mike, my question, now that this investigation, the Mueller investigation, this part of it is over, can expect, like you said, more investigations coming from the Democrats. But now that the Mueller investigation is over, showing that confirming there was no collusion, can we expect Trump now to go back to his campaign pledge of trying to improve relations with Russia?
I don't think so. I know that the Mueller investigation was holding Trump at bay, but I think we may. Yes. I think we may see Trump put on those presidential brass knuckles in one way or the other. Because if you go after a king and you fail, kings have a tendency to come back down hard on you. And we're already seeing that with all these calls for investigations into just how this Russiagate thing got started, how the FISA warrants were obtained, and apparently there are already criminal referrals being made in Congress. We're going to be talking about that in a few minutes.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
All right, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. This is a mess. It's a huge scandal. It is an absolute huge scandal. So Ari Fleischer is out there saying, what did Barack Obama know? It's time we get to the bottom of what exactly the 44th president was doing. Well, the answer may already be out there because of some of the tweets between Lisa Page and Peter Strzok. And apparently there are some in there that make references to White House meetings. So apparently Fox News ran with this story, and neither Lisa Page nor McCabe responded to the inquiries as to, what these briefings were about. Was it about the FISA warrants? So there's definitely a big question mark hanging over Obama right now. And while we have all these other Democrats out there just screaming and crying, not a word from Hillary Clinton yet. Although, like I said earlier, I'll bet the ashtrays are flying over in Hillary land. Maxine Waters is out there saying that Trump and his fans tried to indoctrinate public opinion by repeating, no collusion, no collusion, no collusion. We cannot allow them to get away with this. Well, Maxine, I hate to be the one to tell you this, there was no collusion. And it was the Democrats and the corporate media that were trying to indoctrinate the public by saying collusion, collusion, collusion. Now, out in Hollywood, there's a whole bunch of these stars like, Bette Midler, all those celebrities who said they were going to move to Canada if Trump won in 2016. Well, they're still here. And they're out there tweeting their displeasure, how upset they are that Mueller didn't find anything. And some of them are just downright silly, but they're stamping their little feet and just having a really hard time with it. Now, former FBI Director James Comey tweeted out this rather weird photo. Actually, the photo itself is rather nice, but tweeting it out was rather weird. It's himself surrounded by trees. He's looking up in the sky, and he captioned it, "So many questions." So everybody's out there trying to deal with this. The latest spin coming out of the Democrats is that Trump wanted the Russia investigation, knowing he did nothing wrong, and this would embarrass the Democrats. That evil Donald Trump. He allowed this to happen to make the Democrats look bad. Talk about desperation on the cusp of madness. So now it's time to turn the tables on this Russian collusion hoax. And Trump tweeted out, now it's time to investigate them. And it absolutely is. And apparently the Trump campaign is introducing a massive fundraising effort to basically fund investigations of the people behind this Russiagate hoax. And the campaign is promising a quadruple match of donations, and they'll be using the money to investigate those who perpetrated this hoax, which would include Christopher Steele. Now, Judicial Watch has issued a statement on the Mueller report and paraphrased the statement Gerald R. Ford made following Nixon's resignation over the Watergate scandal. The long national nightmare is over, and President Trump has been vindicated. The corruptly created and constitutionally abusive Mueller investigation failed to find any evidence to support the big lie that the Trump campaign colluded with the Russian government. Of course, the Trump campaign colluded with the Israeli government, but that's no big deal, right? That's just expected. That's how things are done in Washington, D.C. So, getting on further down, Tom Fitton is saying, let's be clear, neither Mueller, the Obama, FBI, DOJ, CIA, State Department, nor the Deep State ever had a good faith basis to pursue President Trump on the Russia collusion story. It wasn't just a hoax, it was criminal abuse, which is why Judicial Watch has fought and will continue to fight for Russiagate documents in federal court. And Judicial Watch is saying that the top levels of the Department of Justice, FBI, CIA, all need to be investigated, along with the Clinton Foundation and Christopher Steele, and whether or not Seth Rich was the leak for the DNC emails to WikiLeaks. There's a lot of fertile ground out there for an honest investigator. So what we have right now is Lindsey Graham is out there vowing to investigate the FBI's unprofessional conduct and troubling behavior by Loretta Lynch and James Comey. And he held a press conference earlier today, and he's basically saying he's going to call on Attorney General William Barr to appoint another special counsel to look into what happened with the FISA warrants and what happened with the counterintelligence operation. Okay, the House Intel readies criminal referrals for Clinton operatives who perpetuated this hoax. So it's starting to happen. And it's time for Trump to put on his presidential brass knuckles. It's time for the GOP to go on the offensive. They've been playing rope-a-dope all this time. Now it's time to hit back. All right, back to the phones. John in Tennessee, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate the point I made about a week ago, which is, basically, while we're all going to sit here and talk about this Mueller report, and we're going to want vengeance against Obama and Hillary and the whole thing that got the ball rolling, Israel is expanding its borders with impunity and America's blessing right now. So they got the Golan Heights, or at least the U.S. said, go ahead, take it, have it. And now we got another rocket attack. And according to SRN News, which is what they use on the Christian radio channels, Israel is concentrating on bombing civilian communities in southern Gaza right now.
Yeah.
So what I want you to do, as much as you are absolutely right, going, this was a vindictive thing against Trump, let's balance that with, the Republicans wouldn't give Trump his wall or anything else they wouldn't give him for the first 2 years, but I want you to just keep reporting on the massacre that Israel's going to unload on Gaza, because they're just going to expand Israel.
Oh, don't you worry. Don't you worry. It is a big chunk of today's talking points.
Okay, all right. That's all I'm saying, because, obviously not that this was deliberately set up this whole way, but, 2 years, $25 million. We hate the left-sided corporate media. We're all pissed off that none of those people lost their jobs. We all want Schiff to resign. I get all that. But honestly, Israel's just been given a green light to just absolutely uncork on Gaza and take anything they want by any means necessary. And I think that's all going to get buried.
Well, it's not going to get buried here, John. It's not going to get buried here. I got a big section of today's talking points that we're going to be talking about that, okay?
All right. Thank you, Mike.
All right. We're going to let you go. All righty. So the other part of our society with egg all over their faces is, of course, the corporate media. And apparently, former CBS News correspondent Lara Logan slammed the establishment media's coverage of the Mueller investigation, stating that journalists repeatedly presented the false impression that the indictments brought by Mueller's prosecutors were for collusion with Russia, when in fact they were for other crimes completely. Brent Bozil is saying after the Mueller report, I don't know how CNN can ever recover. Kurt Schlichter is saying the Trump-Russia collusion treason was all just another elite lie. We have to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're still talking about the fallout from the Mueller report, which basically said there was nothing there. No evidence of collusion, no evidence of obstruction. It was all a big hoax, and the lefties are still out there trying to salvage this thing. Apparently, Alyssa Milano is out there pushing the idea that, now Robert Mueller and William Barr are part of the cover-up and they're covering for Donald Trump, and that's why they won't release the official, the full report. Well, we don't know yet whether or not the full report's going to be released. It's only Monday. We have to give William Barr the benefit of a few days to look through it. Alan Dershowitz, who, by the way, had earlier on said they're not going to find anything, and he was slammed for it in the corporate media. And so he's out there saying this is a very, very bad day for CNN. They should be hanging their head in shame. And he's absolutely right. They should, but they won't. In fact, what's going to happen is you're going to see the corporate media hit the panic button, because this revelation is sending their trust factor right to rock bottom. And they're going to be looking at us in the independent media, who were proven right and who were vindicated by this report, as their mortal enemy. And so they're going to be piling on the pressure to try and drive us out of business. Keep that in mind the next time you hear that little donations beg, because it's going to be open warfare. And of course, this report vindicates Dershowitz himself. Piers Morgan is out there saying the Russian collusion hoax was a disgraceful fake news witch hunt that shames all of Trump's deranged enemies in the media, the FBI, and Hollywood, and has probably ensured their worst nightmare, his re-election. He could well be right. And I've got another observation. I know House Democrats are planning to launch a new investigation. That would be a bad thing to do right now. In the eyes of the public, the Mueller report is the end of it. It's the end of Russian collusion. Glenn Greenwald is out there saying the Russian collusion conspiracy was the saddest media spectacle I have ever seen. And he's been practicing journalism since 2005. And he says what makes it even sadder is to watch all the people who invested their journalistic credibility into what proved to be a complete and total fraud and scam. And now they're trying to figure out how can they recover the credibility. Well, good luck on that one. Just some of the things that came on out here. The claim that Manafort secretly met with Assange. That was fake. CNN, NBC, and CBS all reported that Trump Jr. received info from WikiLeaks prior to the publication, but the email itself showed it was not from WikiLeaks, and it was sent after the publication. That had to be retracted. New York Times falsely asserted WikiLeaks published millions of Turkish women's voting records, trying to discredit WikiLeaks' DNC publication by proxy with feminists. WikiLeaks turned out not to be that publisher. Then you have Newsweek falsely asserting during the U.S. election that WikiLeaks published emails that had been modified and changed and edited. And an academic paper showed this was the #1 fake news story during the election. Newsweek wound up being sued and settled out of court. Now, Spain's New York Times El País falsely claimed Assange and Russia were behind Catalonia's referendum. That one had to be retrieved. I mean, it's just lies. And somewhere buried in whatreallyhappened.com, I've got another article that goes way, way back about all kinds of lies, like how this news network literally rigged the side-mounted gas tanks on a truck with explosives to make the truck look dangerous in order to aid the truck's competitors. There was the Food Lion scandal. I mean, that's what corporate media does here. Guardian falsely reported a Russian plot to smuggle Julian Assange out of the embassy. So a great many of the fake stories relied on WikiLeaks attacking Roger Stone for falsely claiming to have communicated with WikiLeaks as proof of colluding with WikiLeaks. Pardon me. NPR falsely claimed that WikiLeaks published inauthentic Macron leaks during the French election, when WikiLeaks published authentic leaks after the election. Other media falsely claimed the French government attributed the leaks to Russia. All of that got retracted. Many media Russia-gators tried to spin the U.S. government charges against Assange for exposing U.S. war crimes, and the jailing of Chelsea Manning 2 weeks ago to coerce her into testifying in secret against WikiLeaks is somehow connected to Russiagate. They tried to push that one as well. All right, we got to take another break for commercials. We have another caller on the line, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We've got a whole bunch of callers waiting on the phone line, so let's start with Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. This whole thing with Trump, I mean, you talk about the battle of the deep state, how he's got such an opportunity to destroy two major planks of the deep state, well, actually three, the Democratic Party, the media, and the Department of Justice / FBI. I mean, they really, I kept calling in, I've called in before and said, I can't believe they're going so far out on a limb with this, because the whole thing seemed so ridiculous to begin with. It was just part of, like you said, Hillary trying to explain her losing a fixed election. And to see them just, throw caution to the wind and think that because of their power with the media and their power, with their, suits wearing in front of the Department of Justice, that they would get away with this. I just hope that Trump, senses the blood and destroys these people, because he has the most wonderful opportunity to destroy them that any president ever has. And I hope he remembers what they were trying to do to him and his family, and not, let alone the fact that they destroyed almost 2 years of his presidency with this lie and nonsense.
Yes.
So I saw him the other day. He looked angry, and he was saying, we're going to investigate these people. And really, I just hope, because he doesn't just owe it, to himself. He owes it to his supporters that have been, defending him and have been upset about this whole thing. What a lie, what a blatant lie it was. And the other thing is how this damaged our relationship with Russia. I mean, I hope these people are put in jail for a long time for what they did to this country as far as our foreign policy, to our ability to, make friendly relations with Russia, North Korea, you name it. I mean, it's incredible how vile their deeds are on this.
Yes.
And I just hope, like I said, I want to see arrests. I want perp walks. I just, and if Trump doesn't do this, I'll really be upset. But I think he's gonna, because now he's the man who's been wronged. He's the guy he's Clint Eastwood in, High Plains Drifter. He's coming back. He's got law on his side. He's got justice on his side. And I hope he's got a big streak of vengeance, because that's what I want to see.
Well, setting aside issues of vengeance, Trump and his advisors have to know they survived this plot. But the message from that will be there'll be another plot unless Trump takes action right now. And so I'm hoping that Trump is going to put on those presidential brass knuckles and get down to some real business here.
Well, he has to. It's like you said, he has to. And really, the egg on the face. I mean, you know how many Pulitzer Prizes were given to different media people because of the Russia collusion stories?
Yes.
I mean, when you look back on this, it's just going to take a while to digest this. I also would like to say the thing to watch now is watch the people getting thrown overboard. Rachel Maddow will be one.
Yes.
And Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff has got to, if they can't contain this with some other scandal against Trump, how can anybody take some of the faces of this whole charade are going to lose their positions, whether they'll be quietly shunted aside or whether they'll be axed publicly, will be a good indication of how bad this is for the opposition. But Brennan, if he had any decency as a CIA director, ex-CIA, he should commit suicide. But obviously he's too much of a coward, so he definitely belongs in prison for the rest of his life. I could go on and on about these people, but him in particular. I mean, even before Trump was inaugurated, he was out there talking about Trump, the incoming president. And now he's It's unbelievable what he tried to pull. And guys like Bob Corker here in Tennessee and Lamar Alexander, they took every opportunity to talk about the Russians and potential collusion. It's just such a disgrace. And I'm really angry about it, and I'll never forgive these people. I hope they spend the rest of their lives in jail. I really do.
Well, jail would be nice. Probably not going to happen. But what we're seeing is this major shift in public awareness. And frankly, the Democrats and the corporate media did it to themselves. They've destroyed their own credibility. And yeah, they may have just helped Trump win in 2020. Anyway, listen, Joe, we got to let you go. We got a lot of calls on the line here, and I'm going to take them all. Then we're going to close the lines because I got a lot of news to get through today. We'll reopen the lines in hour number 3. Tony in Puerto Rico, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, I'm Mike. Quick comment. Trump is not going to do anything. He sold the real Zapruder film, but that's not why I'm calling. I'm calling in regards to the Koreas. If the Koreas were to unite today, would they be a superpower? And which country in the Pacific Rim are going to lose with a united Korea?
They would not be a superpower. They would definitely be a power, and frankly, I think everybody would gain.
Positively?
I said everybody would gain.
Okay. All
from
right.
increased trade. Increased trade. You know, China wants to run the One Belt, One Road down through both Koreas, and yeah, that would just kick things up. Okay, Tony, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Real quick, Mike, real quick on Israel. This whole thing started from supposedly 2 small rockets or mortar shells being fired and landing in a empty field. So you know this was orchestrated because Netanyahu wasn't he in Washington with Trump signing the Golan Heights thing, and now he's going to go rush back home. So this was all play. I mean, it's very easy to bring people over the border or have infiltrators to do something like this.
Yeah, infiltrators, agents provocateurs.
Yeah,
frankly, I mean, from the range on the rockets that were used against that house, I didn't know Hamas had anything like that. And, of course, no confirmation from anybody in Palestine that they launched that first rocket. But now they're launching back and forth. I mean, Netanyahu's got his war, and war makes for good politics just 2 weeks ahead of the elections. And not only that, of course, the media is going to focus on the war and drop talking about the United Nations Human Rights Council vote against Israel for its war crimes against the Palestinians. Plus, this weekend was supposed to be the 1-year anniversary of the Great March of Return, and they were expecting 1 million Gazans to be at those fences with a war going on. That's not going to happen. So, as I said, again, who benefits? Certainly not Hamas. And certainly Benjamin Netanyahu makes out like a bandit on all of this.
Well, Mike, even like people from Haifa, there's an alert. Because there's a missile attack on Haifa. If you look on the map, Haifa's all the way in the north.
Yes.
There's no way to miss. So that's, there's a lot of bull crap going on. Where a lot of propaganda is moving around in Israel.
Yeah.
What a joke these people. Hey, Mike, on Russia, fake collusion. The damage has been done, though, people. Like, this set us back decades, and Trump's not going to lift the sanctions because he can't. I watched Lindsey Graham today, and he blamed Russia for the Christopher Steele dossier. So it doesn't matter. It's not a Democrat-Republican thing. It's just an imperialist thing. You know what I mean? Like it's just we don't want anybody else being greater than we are. So it's just going to be Russia.
Well, too late for that.
I mean,
too late for that. We're not the greatest nation on earth any longer. And the childish behavior of our political system, I think, underscores that. But you're absolutely right. All the sanctions that were placed on Russia, supposedly for the collusion, those have to be lifted. There was a huge amount of damage done to various people and institutions because of these accusations of Trump-Russia collusion. All of that has to be made right.
It's not, though. Britain's involved in this.
with the Christopher MI5. It's just this group of people, and France too. And like I said, the sanctions on this is not going to be lifted because they still got Trump in a box because he's got Elliot Abrams, the group, Bolton and Pompeo. They're not going to go anywhere. And by the way, Golan Heights, Trump saying this thing doesn't mean squat. Because
no, it doesn't.
The majority of the world is saying, no, wait a minute. And the next president
Actually, the entire rest of the world is saying, no, this is not valid. Trump doesn't have the right to break off a part of Syria and give it to Israel. And again, this destroys the United States' moral authority to criticize Russia over Crimea.
And then, Mike, real quick before I get off the phone, Italy, the Belt and the Road, that's the future. We've been saying they have something to offer, the Chinese to the Italians. Nobody else is offering squat. They just say, Italy, don't do it, but they don't offer any alternative to the Belt and the Road. So, Italy, go for it because you know what? You got 40% youth unemployment over there.
Yep.
And Britain's not going to help, and France got they're not going to help because they got their own problems. All right, Mike, have a good show.
All right, thanks an awful lot. And we're going to switch over to, and this is the name, Not Sure in Nevada. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Hello?
I think they got the wire.
Yeah, we lost
Mike.
Sure.
You got Philip here in Virginia. Aloha.
Okay.
You mentioned about the direction that what's the next shoe that's going to drop, from these people that were pushing this phony baloney collusion delusion. And I think it comes from an article that you ran last week, which was a bombshell about the months-long examination and investigation by Paul Sperry that took the Democracy Integrity Project, where the elaborate media influence operation.
Yes.
You remember that? I mean, and the thing that really irked me the most about it is they are employing Glenn Simpson and who was the other Steele.
Yes.
I mean, why aren't these guys in jail? They're still out there pushing and fabricating nonsense and feeding it to the media, and the media is reporting it. Then the FBI and the alphabet agencies are pointing to the reports in the news saying that it's legitimate. I mean, it's a self-feeding operation here.
Yeah, it is. Philip, do you remember the synthetic bovine growth hormone lawsuit involved Monsanto and Fox News? And basically, these Fox reporters were sent to do a puff piece promoting Monsanto's synthetic bovine growth hormone, and during the course of their reporting, they discovered there were serious questions about its safety, and they wrote a story about that. Fox News said, no, you got to take that out. This is all supposed to be positive because Monsanto advertises with us. The reporters refused. They got fired. They sued Fox News for wrongful termination, and they lost on appeal when the judge reminded everybody there is no law requiring the corporate media to tell the truth to the American people. And that tells you all you need to know about corporate media.
I mean, these low standards of not only the media, but the law enforcement and how they're using these media reports that they're putting out there to justify their investigations. I mean, you talk about low standards, people. It's beyond comprehension. And I do remember that bovine growth hormone case there. I heard it on your program over a year ago. But, I mean, I think you're right that, there's an old saying in the legal system, justice delayed is justice denied. And the president does need to strike back somewhat and get these people back on their heels. And it's not only lock her up, we need to lock them up.
I agree.
They need to be locked up. And until they do that, just like you talk about until they start enforcing Title VIII with immigration, until they start enforcing the laws that are already on the books, there's nothing going to change. You know, and oh boy. Well, anyways, thanks, Mike. Have a great show.
All right, well, thanks an awful lot. We're going to take one more phone call, then we're going to close the lines because I got a lot of news to go through, including what's going on in Israel and Palestine right now. So, Steve Elkins, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I agree with one of your callers past that said, Trump delayed for 2 years of doing his job, tending to the Americans' business. He's had his hands tied. He's had quite an ordeal having to deal with these people putting out these fires. But I think he owes his base an investigation into all these people who colluded and conspired to remove him. That's number one. And he also needs to reestablish the rule of law here. Something has happened that we don't have the rule of law anymore. He needs to give validity back to the U.S. Constitution, and especially that Fourth Amendment where you need evidence and burden of proof and due process. He was right. This thing was a scam, a sham from the very beginning. It was illegal from the very beginning. And I think he needs to put his foot down. He needs to make this precedent. Because if he does not do precedent on this and going back after those people who came after him, he's basically giving them, well, there's no repercussions, there's no actions against us. We'll just continue on with our next little scam and next one and next one. He actually needs to put his foot down and prosecute those polluters.
If he does not respond to this, if he does not go after these people in some way, take away their money, RICO statutes, whatever, they will be back with another plot. I mean, this new investigation out of the Democratic House, it's just a fishing expedition. They've already sent out subpoenas to something like 80 establishments and individuals, and nobody's even said what they're investigating. They're just searching, trying to find something, and that's not the way the process is supposed to work. So, Trump needs to act.
What they're doing now is a dragnet of just seeing what they can pull in.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Trump does need to take decisive action, or there will be more attacks on him. Anyway, Steve,
Mike, thanks.
We're going to let you go here. We've got another commercial break coming on up, then more news. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after these commercials. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And we're finishing up here with the release of the Robert Mueller Nothing Burger and how everybody who was part of the Russiagate hoax, they're now scrambling for cover. And some of them are pretty shameless. Over at the Washington Post, Margaret Sullivan came on out saying that the Washington Post journalists should be proud of their Russia reporting. Talk about utter shamelessness. And apparently, again, Washington Post Jennifer Rubin basically came on out saying that Robert Mueller confirmed that Russia helped Donald Trump in 2016, and thus his election still was not legitimate. They can't let go. And by the way, Jennifer, Mueller's report did not confirm that Russia helped Trump. That they're just screaming out there. Okay, from strategicculture.org, and no surprise, America's trust in corporate media has hit a rock bottom. And gone are the days when U.S. consumers looked into the nightly news and print media as a trusted source of information, and especially if they hold conservative views, according to a new poll by the Columbia Journalism Review. And things are going from bad to worse for the U.S. legacy media as its trust credentials have reached an all-time new low, as if that were possible. It even has a lower trust rating than lawyers in general and members of Congress, and that is pretty bad. And so they're going to panic. Okay. They're absolutely going to panic. And they see the independent media now as their mortal enemy. Emphasis on mortal. Because we were right all along. And a lot of people who've been following all of these various issues for a lot of years are probably going to be saying, okay, the independent media was right about the Mueller report. Were they also right about 9/11? Were they also right about the Boston Marathon bombing? Were they also right about Sandy Hook? This could actually be the beginning of the collapse of the corporate media. They're already being propped up. They're already on life support. So, anyway, Joy Reid was out there saying that Trump's criticism of the media is a violation of the First Amendment, proving that she doesn't actually understand the First Amendment and the Bill of Rights. She actually came on out and said that Trump's attacking the media could be grounds for impeachment, which tells us that Joy Reid doesn't understand impeachment. All right, we got to take a break here for station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And as the Russiagate story fades away, as the Russian collusion fades away, not likely. We're going to keep it going. I mean, the Democrats' plan was to keep the investigations and the suspicions going right up to 2020. Well, we can do that too. And we're going to keep this story of this huge embarrassment and scandal going right into 2020. But we have this other situation of this Ukrainian plot to help Hillary Clinton. And apparently, Ukraine's top prosecutor divulged in an interview aired on Hill TV that he has opened an investigation into whether his country's law enforcement apparatus intentionally leaked financial records during the 2016 U.S. presidential campaign about then Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort in an effort to sway the election in favor of Hillary Clinton. Well, that sure sounds like collusion to me. All right, so let's get on to Israel and Palestine because it's really heated up over there. And it all began over the weekend with a single rocket that struck a house and injured 7 people. It was a very long-range rocket for Hamas. Palestine is saying they have no idea who fired the rocket. And so immediately, given the cute timing about this, to me, it looks like a typical false flag attack. But Israel has now fired back. They've attacked Hamas targets in Gaza. And Gaza is, of course, shooting back because that's what you do when you're being attacked. The sirens are blaring all over Israel. And as that caller pointed out, they're blaring in communities well out of range of anything Gaza could fire. And by the way, for that first rocket that hit that house, where the heck was Iron Dome? That makes me suspicious. So anyway, Netanyahu is cutting his U.S. visit short. He's, I think, heading back to Israel tomorrow. He was going to head back today, but he decided to stay to have a press conference with Donald Trump and to witness the signing of the U.S. recognition of Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, which in international law is actually meaningless. And it may be that Netanyahu wanted to get out of town before American reporters started asking him about all of his political corruption scandals, including the new one that just popped up about the submarine deal. But that first attack that happened, it's too cute. It does not help Hamas. It helps Netanyahu. They're 2 weeks away from the elections, and in Israel, killing Palestinians is good politics. You've got the coming weekend is the one-year anniversary of the Great March of Return, where 1 million Gazans were expected to march along the fence. An Israeli war would derail that, not to mention, of course, this deflects the impact of the United Nations Human Rights Council vote that condemned Israel for war crimes against the Palestinian people and urged an arms embargo. All right, Israel's also retaliating against Gaza, claiming there was a barrage of 300 explosives thrown across the border fence at Israeli troops. Seems like an awful lot to me. Israeli air-to-ground missile wounds 3 Palestinians in central Gaza. And apparently it was a missile fired by an Israeli drone and the 3 wounded men are now in the hospital. So Trump has now officially signed the proclamation recognizing Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. And again, in international law, it's utterly meaningless. Trump does not have the authority to say, yes, Israel now owns this part of Syria. And every other nation on earth has basically said, no, this is null and void. It is illegal under international law. Meanwhile, Syria is vowing to recover the Golan Heights, far from regional stability, which is what Donald Trump said this was all about. He may have just started war. Of course, maybe that's what he wants. Because if Israel goes to war with Syria, Russia's going to step on in, the U.S. steps on in, Syria goes up in flames again. And Erdogan over there in Turkey is saying Trump's statement that it's time to recognize Israeli sovereignty over Golan has brought the region to the edge of a new crisis. Iran is saying the declaration is illegal and unacceptable. Syria is saying it's an attack on their sovereignty and their territorial integrity. Now, do you remember back when there was that whole brouhaha about Crimea, when they wanted to break away? And we were being told, we must respect the territorial integrity of Ukraine. We can't have a piece of it break off. But if it's Syria, yeah, let's snap off a piece here. The one with the oil and gas. Now, Erdogan is saying that Turkey will take the issue of the Golan Heights to the United Nations. Now, how far he can get with it, I don't know. There's probably going to be a General Assembly vote that will be overwhelmingly against the United States. But unfortunately, with the United States having a permanent veto in the Security Council, not much more than that. But Erdogan is saying the legitimization of the occupation of the Golan Heights cannot be allowed. And I'll tell you what's going to happen. Okay, this is going to delegitimize Trump. See, Netanyahu is still thinking the United States, greatest nation on earth, what the president of the United States does, everybody else will fall in line. That's not happening. You're going to see the leaders of all these other countries looking at Donald Trump and saying, this was a dumb thing to do and we're not going to listen to him anymore. That's what's going to happen. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Meanwhile, the Israeli army in the Golan is bracing for violence. They're expecting there to be some kind of a response, in the northern Golan Heights. No overt signs of Syrian military intervention yet, but we'll see here. Article coming out of Aleppo News. Trump's stance on the Golan will allow Israel to operate with impunity elsewhere. Meaning Israel will be emboldened to go on out and say, well, we're going to grab this piece of land, we're going to grab this piece of land. Eretz Israel, here we come. So, and in the Department of, you could see this coming, Israeli politicians are now pushing for Donald Trump to recognize the West Bank as part of Israel. So there's that here. Another opinion coming on out from Press TV that Trump's Golan remarks only bolster the resistance against Israel. And basically he's made the resistance front more resolute against the Israeli regime and its supporters following his remarks in recognition of Israel's sovereignty over the occupied Golan Heights. This is coming from a senior advisor to leader of the Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei, and Ali Akbar Velayati, who is also Secretary General of the World Assembly of Islamic Awakening, made the remarks in a Sunday statement in response to Trump's announcement. So things just got a lot worse. The U.S.-backed Kurds have declared ISIS defeated in Syria, and they basically announced Saturday they are formally declaring ISIS is 100% territorially defeated. In other words, they are not in control of any territory. There's probably still a bunch of these fighters running around, maybe between 15,000 and 20,000, but without a contiguous area to work from, they won't last very long. This, by the way, is the 15th time that victory has been declared over ISIS since the start of the year. Okay. Apparently, Saturday, there's a hospital in government-held Hama saying 21 people suffering choking symptoms were admitted following rebels shelling a village, and they've been exposed to some kind of poison gas. And they're still not sure if it was a chemical weapon or just smoke and dust raised by the shelling. But they're on oxygen in the hospital. All right, let's turn to Venezuela. Russia has basically drawn a red line and said to the United States, do not cross this, or we're going to support Venezuela the way we supported Syria. That did not work out very well for you. And to sort of underscore this, 2 Russian Air Force planes landed in Venezuela's main airport Saturday, carrying a Russian defense official, around 100 troops, and 35 tons of equipment. One of the 2 planes was an Antonov 124 cargo plane. This is the world's largest cargo plane, had a lot of stuff in there. Now, in response to this, Mike Pompeo was out there demanding that Moscow cease this unconstructive behavior in Venezuela. So it looks like we're going to have a proxy war between the United States and Russia in Venezuela. And Russia's being very visible about their deployment. And again, this is all United States aggression. By the way, Venezuela just a short while ago got hit with another one of these massive blackouts. 16 of Venezuela's 23 states are now without electricity. So they're just keeping up the pressure. Now, Maduro on Saturday announced that the country's special forces thwarted a plan to assassinate him directed by the opposition's leader, Juan Guaido. This was reported in Agence France Presse. And Maduro's out there talking about how there was this terrorist plot, and he's arrested Juan Guaido's aide, who was part of this terrorist plot. And in response to the arresting of Guaido's aide, the United States has now blacklisted the Venezuelan state banks. The U.S. is also warning Venezuela's Maduro over detained Citgo workers and others. Apparently, there are some Americans who've been detained in Venezuela, including 6 executives from the Houston-based oil company Citgo. They've been jailed since 2017. Now, if I were Maduro, I'd actually let them go. They're irrelevant to what's going on right now. But the U.S. is going to make a cause célèbre about them here. Meanwhile, Trump is dangling investment to Caribbean leaders who back Juan Guaido. And Donald Trump is pledging investment with 5 Caribbean leaders who have sided with the United States in backing Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido as head of state. In other words, it's a bribe. You know, if you recognize Juan Guaido, if you help us regime change Venezuela, we're going to give you a bunch of money, and absolute promise, hand on the Bible, we will never regime change you. Russia and China are out there expressing hope for the immediate success of U.S. talks with the Taliban. Like we've mentioned before, things aren't going all that well in Afghanistan, and the U.S. is looking for a graceful exit. Basically, they want to leave Afghanistan and somehow pretend like it was a victory. Same thing they're trying to do in Syria. But Russia and China support U.S. talks with the Taliban movement. They're hoping for the immediate success of the dialogue, and they want to see a stable peace in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, that's going to be complicated because U.S. airstrikes killed a dozen Afghan civilians. So you have the U.S. talking peace on one hand and withdrawal on one hand, and on the other hand, they're still bombing the heck out of the place. Apparently, they killed about a dozen civilians in the northern province of Kunduz, and the strikes came as U.S.-backed Afghan forces and Taliban militants vie for control of the area. One provincial councilor put the death toll at 12. Another estimated it was actually 13, including children. Now, NATO spokeswoman Sergeant Deborah Richardson told Reuters that the alliance's Resolute Support Mission is aware of the casualty reports and that investigates all such credible allegations. We take every measure to prevent civilian casualties, in contrast to the Taliban, who intentionally hide behind women and children. So note the spin there. The U.S. warplanes can kill a bunch of civilians, but it's that dastardly Taliban. They're the bad ones. As I mentioned before, the United Nations Human Rights Council voted 23-8 for an arms embargo against Israel and the prosecution of Israelis for war crimes over IDF actions along the Gaza border this last year, primarily consisting of the shooting of unarmed protesters in the Great March of Return and in the West Bank. Now, Australia was the only country who voted against all 5 of the resolutions that were presented. There were 5 different resolutions. Neither Israel or the United States are members of the Council. And of course, now with Israel kicking up a new war with Gaza, the world media is going to ignore that, because we can't let the public know that Israel has been criticized by the United Nations. Okay, the Palestinian ambassador to the UN in Geneva said that Israeli crimes against peaceful Palestinian protesters in Gaza should go to the International Criminal Court. Ibrahim Qarashi's call came after the UN Human Rights Council vote passing that resolution, strengthening the UN presence in Israeli-occupied Palestinian territory. That was one of the 5 resolutions. The Council said it was gravely concerned by the findings of the UN-appointed Independent International Commission of Inquiry, which said Israeli forces may have committed war crimes and crimes against humanity during the peaceful Great March of Return protests. So they're pushing to take it to the International Criminal Court. Over in Morocco, 5 Israelis have been arrested for producing fake passports. And apparently it was this network that committed various crimes, including the production of fake passports. And the network was headed by a Moroccan Jew whose name is not being released. Now, the network was uncovered earlier this month after suspicions were raised that IDs and passports were being created for Jews of Moroccan origins, noting that 2 of the suspects were on an Interpol wanted list. So that all came apart here. Over in Belgrade, protesters are demanding their president and premier resign. And they had this protest on Saturday. It ended without major incidents. It was a peaceful protest. And a spokesman for the protesters said, for 4 months, we've been campaigning for 3 major things. Firstly, the resignation of President Vučić and Prime Minister, can't pronounce that one. Secondly, the dismissal of the Regulatory Authority of Electronic Media's Council. And thirdly, the resignation of Parliament Speaker Maja Gošković. And he vowed the protesters would take resolute, practical steps if those demands are not met. And if a transitional government charged with holding early elections within 6 months is not formed. Remember what I said about this push for a global government could create the climate for a global revolution? It may be happening. Alrighty, apparently the Trump administration has missed another congressional deadline to lay out the U.S. strategy in Yemen, which is basically admitting that this is a U.S. war and Saudi Arabia is just our proxy. And apparently the Pentagon so far has actually failed to come up with an actual concrete strategy. it seems like they're just throwing the bombs and bullets in there and hoping for the best. And people are starting to look at the costs of American involvement, including the refueling mission, which was terminated last November. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And speaking of Yemen, apparently British forces are on the ground in Yemen, and they're British commandos. They're supposed to be trainers and advisors, but they're being wounded. And of course, we heard that big lie during Vietnam as well. But apparently the injured soldiers have been taken back to Great Britain to recover. So everybody's getting a little piece of this action, aren't they? Okay, getting on back to Crimea. Reunification with Russia is turning out to be a good thing. Basically, Putin was in Crimea earlier this week to celebrate the 5th anniversary of the peninsula's reunification with Russia. And while he was there, he officially inaugurated 2 major upgrades to Crimea's power grid. Plus, they're having that new bridge that's going to be built over to the Russian mainland. So he's building up the place. He's spending money on the infrastructure. Okay, over in France, again, the Yellow Vest protests were out there. There was a scuffle between protesters and police, during which a 73-year-old Yellow Vest protester, a woman, was knocked on the ground and suffered serious head injuries after being charged by the police in Nice. And French President Emmanuel Macron says he hopes that she gains wisdom from this, that fragile people should not be in such places. You're all heart there, Macron. And once again, yesterday, U.S. warships, sailed through the Strait of Taiwan, which is a provocation toward China. This at a time when we're being told that the trade talks are at a critical juncture. Now, Beijing is already threatening retaliation over Washington's expected sale of dozens of F-16s and tanks to Taiwan. But this apparently, the Navy destroyer Curtis Wilbur and the Coast Guard cutter Bertholf sailed through the Strait of Taiwan. That's a poke in the eye right there. Do they really want war with Russia and China? Do they actually think they can win it without going the nuclear route? Now, last week, North Korea pulled out of the liaison office with South Korea in what looked to be a major setback for, just talks, peace. But North Korea has now returned. And it's a sign that Pyongyang remains open to diplomacy with Seoul and Washington after the détente had showed signs of extreme strain here. All right, let's turn to the domestic politics here. And boy, if Robert Mueller's looking for something to do, because he's kind of out of a job here, you ought to go on over to Judicial Watch and take a look at some of the stuff they're finding, because Judicial Watch has uncovered 756 pages of new Hillary emails that she tried to destroy. Several of them were classified, and they were transmitted over her unsecure non-state gov email system. That is a Title 18 felony violation right there. So where are the handcuffs? Where's the lock her up? Now, Hillary Clinton repeatedly stated that the 55,000 pages of documents she turned over to the State Department in December 2014 included all of her work-related emails. In response to a court order in another Judicial Watch case, she declared under penalty of perjury in 2015 that she had directed that all my emails on clintonemail.com in my custody that were or are potentially federal records be provided to the Department of State, and on information and belief this has been done. She does talk like a lawyer. Well, remember there was that 33,000 emails that she tried to erase, and apparently somebody was able to recover them? That's where Judicial Watch is getting these new pages, and they're finding work-related emails that weren't turned over to the State Department, and they're finding classified information that was sent over an unsecured email server. That's Title VIII violation right there. Now, there's a rather interesting little story here. This came from mysuncoast.com, and it's basically saying that the FBI is refusing to report its hate crime numbers again this year, which is required by law. But apparently this article says there have been some horrific hate crimes which do not show up in the FBI's online database. And there's basically a bias. Black on white hate crimes tend to somehow get lost. And so they're politicizing the numbers. They're politicizing the results of the database here. All right, pardon me. We're going to take another break for commercials here, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And yeah, let's go ahead and open up the lines because I've gotten through the really important stuff. Let's see. You know, right now there's this fury, if you will, going around where anybody who ever did blackface any time in their life, even as a kid for a Halloween costume, is being attacked and harassed, driven out of their jobs, just vilified, with one notable exception. Okay, Orthodox Jews for the holiday of Purim will often dress in blackface, and they're out there insisting it's not racist. So it's another one of these double standards in our society. Okay, here's some good news. Remember Michael Avenatti? It was Stormy Daniels' lawyer, and he was out there, he was getting a lot of press, and he was going to, you know, he was saying Donald Trump Jr. is going to be in jail before his birthday. Well, it worked out the other way around, because he was arrested earlier today on charges that he tried to extort up to $25 million from Nike by threatening to hurt that athletic apparel giant financially with negative publicity. And he's also charged in a separate federal case out of Los Angeles, where he's accused of embezzling a client's money in order to pay his own expenses and debts, and of defrauding a bank in Mississippi. Boy, this guy is a piece of work. But then, hey, he's a lawyer. What can I tell you? Okay. Now, Africa is now showing interest on signing on to China's Belt and Road Initiative, and they're seeing this is a way forward of just being able to get products to come in and go out much faster, much less expensive. And the United States is very upset about this. They can't compete. They just cannot compete. China's building this infrastructure, which does include some high-speed cargo ships, and the U.S. has basically shot all their money on all these war things. All right. Boeing shares are headed down. Apparently, Airbus sealed this $18 billion deal with China. There had been talk that China was still looking at both Boeing and Airbus, but China decided they're going to go with Airbus. And so Boeing is in trouble, and there's no doubt about it. We'll be talking more about that a little later in the show. Everybody's talking about the debt crisis, and Americans, the debt problem is so bad. 40% of people in California and New York want to move to more rural areas, to where the cost of living is lower and they can deal with it. Claire and I would love to get out of here in Hawaii. You know, prices are going up. They just raised the general excise tax. Our rent just got raised. And we would love to find some way we could get the money to get back to the heartland of America, somewhere around Indiana where we have family. Basically, we're Hawaiian sourdoughs. We're sour on Hawaii, but we don't have the dough to leave. Our little light rail project here on Oahu is apparently now becoming national news. The Wall Street Journal was reporting on it, basically saying this is a $9 billion debacle. And the idea was this elevated rail system to bypass what has been some of the country's worst traffic, whisking commuters from the farmland and swelling suburbs of West Oahu into the heart of Honolulu. Well, already they've scaled that back. That end of the track isn't going to reach all the way into Honolulu. They're going to run buses. That's how badly botched up this thing is. But it's a 20-mile route. It goes right along this tropical shoreline. It's an eyesore, I will tell you that right now. The stations are way too far apart for it to be practical. It's certainly going to serve the people in Honolulu, and it's going to serve the people out in Kapolei, and it's serving the shopping centers all the way along. But for most people, it is simply going to be too far away to get to unless they drive, and so far I'm not seeing what looks like significant parking lots associated with this. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. And apparently there is now a grand jury investigation into how all this was handled. A lot of people are afraid that what's going to happen is we're never going to get the train, and we're going to spend the rest of our lives looking at these concrete tracks over our heads. Okay. Over in Great Britain, Theresa May has delivered yet another speech to Parliament ahead of the Brexit debate. And apparently the day before that, Theresa May held an emergency meeting at her Chequers country residence to discuss the Brexit crisis. Now, the European Union has agreed to grant the UK a delay beyond the original departure date of March 29th, which is the end of this week, but it's only for a couple of weeks. And they're saying, come up with a deal or it's out here. Apparently, a Brexiteer member of Parliament is out there saying that Theresa May's departure is absolutely guaranteed. They're trying to basically push her out. Nigel Evans has claimed the Prime Minister's resignation is absolutely guaranteed, and they're saying the Prime Minister could still save her legacy by delivering the Brexit that Brits voted for in the 2016 votes. So, very interesting times over in Great Britain. Yeah, that was the problem. The Brits voted for a Brexit, and Theresa May, who was a Remainer, tried to give them something, call it Brexit Light, or simulated Brexit. Down in New Zealand, we're still dealing with the aftermath of that Christchurch shooting and questions about whether it was a staged event or not. And it's starting to look more like the latter. As you know, the video that was shot by the shooter has now been banned in both New Zealand and Australia. And if you have it on your computer, you could face 10 years in prison. It seems rather draconian, but that's what they've done. Now they have added the manifesto itself, the 74 pages written and released by the guy accused of killing all those people in the mosques. And local media organizations are saying they're not going to even name the man anymore. They're just trying to make him go away. Now, that manifesto provides the greatest insight into his character and thinking. And it should be public. Actually, it already is. It's out there. You know, I'm sure you can find it. But for the New Zealand government to be taking these steps, they certainly act like they've got something to hide, don't they? So let's get back to Boeing and the 737 MAX. And it appears to be a classic case of good engineering but bad business management, because Boeing was trying to cut costs and squeeze every dollar out of the 737, and it looks like they just went with this software before it was really perfectly tested. Now they're rushing out a software patch, but I don't know that that's going to reassure people. But these crashes have the same cause: a rogue control system that took over from the pilots and sent the airplanes into a terrifying death dive. Now, Boeing could actually be charged for not making 737 MAX safety upgrades standard. See, there is the sticking point. There is the decision that was made that could get Boeing into serious trouble. Because there were these two additional safety features, we talked about them, that had to do with angle of attack and verifying that what the computers thought the angle of attack were accurate. There was an angle of attack disagree warning, meaning you're getting different readings from different sensors. Then there was another one that provided a visual reference of the airflow over the nose of the aircraft. But they were not standard. They were upgrades for an extra fee. And these poorer carriers, including those in Ethiopia and Indonesia, could not afford it. And so Boeing's in trouble over that. And it's a shame. Boeing used to have this wonderful reputation going back to the 707. Okay, let's talk about some gun laws. Guess which state just banned all federal gun control laws? And if you say Missouri, you get a cookie. And what we're seeing is not getting reported a lot, but we are seeing Second Amendment sanctuary cities, counties, and even states spring up across the country. Now, if it's valid for illegal immigration, it goes to thinking, it's valid for gun rights. And so federal agencies do not have state powers. That's in the Constitution, the dual sovereignty. The feds have no authority to enforce state laws. States cannot be compelled to enforce federal laws. That is just the reality. So in Colorado, 23 out of 64 counties have adopted Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions. Over in Illinois, 63 out of 102 counties have adopted sanctuary resolutions. Maryland, 3 out of 23 counties. Over in Nevada, sheriffs in Nye County and Eureka County have said they oppose the new gun laws in the state. They will not enforce them. In New Mexico, when New Mexico's new Democratic governor, Michelle Lujan Grisham, was sworn into office on January 1st, Democrats in the state rushed to expand gun control. Those bills were met with opposition from most of New Mexico's sheriffs. Up in New York, after they passed the SAFE Act in 2013, some New York counties passed resolutions in opposition. There are currently 52 out of 62 counties with such resolutions, and the New York State Sheriff's Association sued to block the law. Over in North Carolina, they just recently joined the revolution, or the resistance. Cherokee County passed a 3-page resolution with a slim 3-2 vote after resolution author Dan Eichenbaum told fellow commissioners the first thing dictators do is confiscate the guns. Up in Oregon, out of the 36 counties in the state, 13 have adopted Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions. In Washington state, several of their sheriffs in the state have publicly vowed not to enforce federal gun laws. So it is a growing movement all across the country. There are even 3 sanctuary states: Alaska, Idaho, and Kansas. Okay. Article out of Investment Watch blog. You don't want to be a science denier, do you? You're always hearing that about the global warming cultists and so forth. But apparently somebody did a study. This came out of the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health and UC Davis, and they basically took a look at what effect California's comprehensive background check and misdemeanor violence prohibition policies had on firearm mortality. And they found out it had no effect whatsoever. They found that neither California's comprehensive background checks nor its prohibition of misdemeanor violence conviction status for firearms purchases made any difference in the incidence of firearm homicide or suicides. No difference at all. All right, we're going to grab ourselves a phone call. Sean in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. I had some information I wanted to share with you. This is coming from, there's a show that I got a glimpse of on YouTube by a gentleman, Dave Hodges. He does a show called The Common Sense Show.
Yes.
And if you go to it, it'll be one of the first things you pop on. It says World War III will start at the southern border. Well, his first guest was a lady that presented breaking news that she had spoken to one of her friends in Venezuela, and she presented the question to him about all the things going on there. And when she asked, do you believe that the United States is responsible for all this mess, and do you think they're also responsible for when your lights went out? His response was absolutely not. And he named a group called the G2 Security Force from Cuba being responsible for everything going on. And I have no opinion about this one way or another. I just wanted to present you with that. And supposedly, I guess the backstory to that is, when you think about it, Russia has ties with Cuba.
Well, let me ask you a simple question.
Ended it with,
let me ask you a simple question.
Maduro to blame it on the United States.
Sean?
Yes.
Okay. Here's the question. Russia has good relations with Cuba and with Venezuela. Okay. Why would Cuba do this to Venezuela? What's the motive? And that's why the story falls apart. Anyway, thank you for the phone call.
It makes us look like a bad guy in this situation.
We already look like the bad guys. We're the bad guys of the world. They don't need to do anything to Venezuela.
This is just
Sean, let me talk. I mean, we're already the bad guys in the eyes of the world after lying about Saddam's nuclear weapons, lying about Assad's sarin gas, bombing the heck out of everybody, wars everywhere that you can turn to. They don't need to do anything to Venezuela to make the United States look like the bad guys here. Anyway, Sean, thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go. Man. Okay. Getting on back to that college admissions scandal. Apparently, there's a UCLA soccer coach resigned for taking a $100,000 bribe to put a real estate developer's daughter on the roster so she would get accepted, even though she had never played competitively. And we mentioned that briefly last week, but the update to the story is he's been forced to resign. Well, good. They ought to. They just made a mockery of higher education. Okay, we got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And normally we have a rule of one call per caller per day, but we're going to break it because apparently Dustin in New Jersey had a response to the comment about Dave Hodges. So, Dustin, take it away.
Mike, I don't know if I want to scream or cry. Please, folks, stop watching the Dave Hodges report. It's crap. He said a couple years back there was Spetsnaz in the country. They were all in locations that were going to knock out our grid. He's a crap person. He gets these people on. They're on YouTube that spout out crap. Now, you listen to whatreallyhappened.com. You learn what's going on. The Duran.com. Crosstalk on RT. That's it, folks. David Hodges is just a chronic. It's basically his business is all about you going and listening to the show and making money. I mean, that's about it. You know, it's nonsense that Cuba would knock out Venezuela's power. That just makes no sense strategically at all.
No, it doesn't.
You know, I mean, We had the virus in Iran. That's a fact that we infected, us and Israel. And this power, sure, Venezuela has electrical problems because of all the sanctions throughout the years and years and years. I mean, they got old infrastructure they're trying to fix if you left them alone. But I mean, all this is occurring now, these power outages, while the U.S. is doing this. And the U.S. is the one that's the aggressive one, to that caller. Like you said, Mike.
Yeah.
Russia and Cuba didn't attack Iraq. They didn't F up Libya. They're not arming Saudi Arabia and helping in Yemen. They didn't arm terrorists in Syria. And they didn't mess up Ukraine. That was the United States, the British, the French, the EU. That's it. Russia had nothing to do with that. So you can watch David Hodges, but you're getting the wrong information, pal. You got to do you got to sit down and do some basic research. That's all I got to say, Mike. Have a good show.
All right, thanks an awful lot here, and we're going to switch over to Bruce in Texas. And Bruce, I may have to take you through the station identification. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hello, Mike.
Hello. You're on the air.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'll make it quick. Maybe I'll get through before the break. I just heard an extend the invite, and you're a NASA former employee. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I was watching a film on the NASA astronauts. Dick Slayton was grounded with atrial fibrillation, and the video is he stated that he started taking vitamins and his AFib went away. Is that where they got the formula for Extendivite, I wonder?
No, the formula came from this gentleman up in Canada who suffered his own heart attack and just came up with it himself here. A lot of the astronauts did have medical problems which grounded them. Perhaps the most famous is Alan Shepard, who after his first flight into space developed a serious ear problem, but he stayed with the program in management until finally there was a surgeon who was able to fix his ear, and he got to fly as the commander of, I think it was Apollo 14. That's a long time to wait for that center seat.
Okay, yeah. Dave Hodges is fake news, like the other caller said. Talk to you later.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We got another caller waiting on the line. We'll get to as soon as we come back from station identification. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. And we're going to go right back to the phones, starting with W in Texas. Aloha, W. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, I just wanted to mention the Mueller report.
Yes.
And I think the thing about that is that although obviously Trump was vindicated, and he should have been because the whole story was bogus from the beginning, but the left behind of what this whole thing was all the censorship that took place as a result of this narrative that they put forward. So it was really like a Trojan horse to bring in the censorship. So of course, I mean, he's going to be vindicated, but all the censorship that's taken place since November 2016, it was nothing like that beforehand. So I think that's really what I wanted to say, was that
now,
that was the state behind
which
all this.
censorship specifically are you referring to? In the corporate media or the social media?
Exactly. Social media, deplatforming, all that. Corporate, exactly. So that's what I wanted to say. Is
well,
that
there's another lesson for you right there. Social media that was, trying to suppress doubt about the Mueller investigation. You guys were all wrong, and we were right. Anyway, thank you for the phone call, and we're going to switch over to Miles in Maine. Aloha, Miles. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good afternoon, Michael. Good show. I just wanted to say Dustin is exactly right. Hodges was on this show, or on this network, rather, and during his tenure on the network, all he did was do a lot of pushing for Israel that I saw. And his show, like Dustin said, it really was never backed with any real facts. And then I wanted to ask you, what were the proclamations Trump made in the Middle East again? What were the ones that you had mentioned?
Well, it's just the one in which the United States formally recognizes Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, and it has led to global condemnation.
Yeah, well, while he was at it, he should have recognized their sovereignty over Washington, D.C.
Well, I think they've already done that.
Yeah. And then, I wanted to ask you, because I know you're big on this and I enjoy it. I mean, I think everybody, you grow up and you enjoy NASA, but have we gotten any bang for the buck out of them? I mean, when I was a young kid, at least, seems like we would get some technology back that would trickle into the consumer market, or, at least a little something. I don't see anything that we've gotten from any of these, last couple decades of exploration.
Well, part of the reason for that, of course, is that NASA's budget was cut and they couldn't do a lot of R&D. And also under the Obama administration, NASA's mission was changed to basically rubber stamp human-caused global warming. And so they just, basically plunked around coming up with charts and graphs and stuff like that. They're only just now really starting to gear back up to go back out into space, and I'm sure there's going to be a technological fallout. It won't be as dramatic as it was in the 60s and 70s, because back then it was all brand new. They were doing it for the first time, but there are going to be refinements now, and I'm expecting there's going to be some interesting material science technology coming out of the Kepler Space Telescope.
Yeah, I just didn't know how that worked. If they just, because we haven't heard from anything. Now, I know some of the European countries have used some recent technology. I'm sure Russia has, but I didn't know if that the way that worked was they kept the information or they turned it over to companies that maybe purchased technology so they could develop, or how that works out. Do you know anything about that, Michael?
I don't know how it's handled currently, but back when I was with NASA, there was this department where all of this technology was released into, and it was then basically announced to a list of known and trusted companies who could then apply for it, and it would be handed over to them.
Okay, Michael, thank you so much. I appreciate the info.
All right, thanks an awful lot.
Job.
Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Okay, phone lines are open here. We're talking about the college admission scandals, and apparently some of the wealthy parents accused of paying bribes to get their kids into top universities may get short stints behind bars if convicted, to send a message that the privileged are not above the law, some lawyers say. But others predict that most, if not all, will end up with probation and a fine, particularly if they quickly agree to accept responsibility and cooperate, which they probably are going to do. Anyway, Lori Lohner's daughter, Olivia Jade, is furious at her parents. She's now blaming them for destroying her career. She's saying, it's your fault, you pushed me to go to USC. You bribed USC to get me in there. Now I've had to leave because of this scandal. Apparently, Olivia had begged her parents to let her focus on her career as a YouTube vlogger and Instagram influencer. Well, I can see why the parents would have said go to college. I'm not even sure that being a YouTube vlogger and an Instagram influencer count as a career. Meanwhile, the University of Southern California says it will not allow current students who may be associated with the nation's largest ever college admissions bribery scandal to register for classes as the school conducts a case-by-case review of their involvement. They're also going to be freezing their transcripts. So this is a mess. It's a huge, huge mess. All right, story out of Daily Wire. I went to San Francisco. What happened to one of America's most beautiful cities? Claire and I felt the same way. And apparently a big part of the problem is that San Francisco has about 7,000 homeless people, but apparently the drug issue is making things worse. The city currently hands out more than 400,000 syringes each month, but only 246,000 are returned. That leaves 154,000 syringes just lying on the streets. And they just describe this horrible situation, you know, defecating in the streets and third world conditions. We are a nation in decline. There's no question about it. When you go out and you see this, we see it here in Honolulu. We are in decline. Things are cracking up. They're getting dirty. We're being bankrupted to pay for all these wars. And now Trump wants to start another one with Venezuela. And we know what Russia's strategy is going to be. They even announced it years ago. Get the U.S. tangled up in these wars of attrition and just grind them down. That's what worked in Vietnam. That's what worked in Syria. That's apparently what worked in Afghanistan. And it's going to happen again. All right, back to the phones. Mark in Montana, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Howdy, Michael. How you doing today?
Doing okay.
Good. You know, I've been calling in for about a better part of a year, I suppose. I've never said this, but I'm a Jew, so I kind of side a little bit more with the Israeli population. I hate all government for the most part, but I don't inherently see the Jewish government any worse than any other government. But whenever these things start happening, they're being pounded pretty heavy over there. I got a buddy that lives outside of Tel Aviv, and I check on him and make sure he's okay. And he'll tell you, all we want to do is we just want to be left alone. He said, I don't want to have to wake up and go to a damn bomb shelter because he's a teacher, and not make it to school to teach because we're being bombarded with rockets. And the Palestinian Authority did claim responsibility for this. They did say they're sorry, it was a mistake. But then they continue to bomb. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying what the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians is right, but I'm also saying that, you know, terrorizing the civilian population is not right either.
Well, what do you call it when the Israeli forces just fire randomly into crowds of peaceful protesters?
And, you know, I talked to Ariel about that, and he says that they're not peaceful protesters. He said there's some that are peaceful protesters, but there's a lot of them that are coming with Molotov cocktails and rocks and stoning people. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the equivalent of being shot at, but I'm saying there comes a point where self-defense does come into mind. I'm not going to sit there and allow myself to be assaulted.
You know, Mark, I got to tell you in all honesty, I mean, I understand, I'm grateful you admitted your bias coming into this, but your bias is definitely showing. You know, those Israeli soldiers who are shooting into the protesters, they're shooting from 100 yards away, way beyond the range somebody can throw a Molotov cocktail. They're shooting from inside reinforced bunkers. They're not defending themselves. Okay, and when you look at Israel's military might and the fact that they have nuclear weapons, you know, Gaza is a giant open-air prison. It's a gulag. It's worse than the Warsaw Ghetto, and those people have justification for being angry and wanting to get out.
I didn't say that. They didn't have justification for wanting to get out and for being angry. What I did say is there comes a point as an individual that I have the right to self-defense, and I think a country does also. I'm saying Gaza probably does. But I think that the Gazans, or whatever you want to call them there, Palestinians, would be much better off coming to the negotiation tables. I really do. And if you look at some of these so-called negotiations, they walk out. No, they'll walk out over an inch.
What happens is you'll come on in, and Israel will they'll say, this is what we want, and the Palestinians will agree, and then Israel say, just one more thing, and the Palestinians will agree. Then Israel says, just one more thing, and they keep on doing that until the Palestinians realize that Israel is not negotiating in good faith, and that's why they leave. Plus, prior experience has shown that Israel's promises made at the negotiating table really they're not kept up. If you look at the abuses of the separation wall, which was supposed to follow the Green Line, and instead it's pushed way into Palestinian territory. That's a good example of how these promises negotiations are not being kept.
Okay, I understand, and I'm like I said, I'm a guy. I'm Christian. I converted, so I don't really have a dog in the hunt, other than I've got relatives over there. You know.
Well, I hope they're safe.
Would you think that maybe I do, and I check on them. You know, me and none of them are military guys. They're teachers, and one's an attorney, and one's, I don't know, food service worker or something. But I do. I think that maybe you're a little biased also. And
you know,
I think
what I think should happen
on either side.
What was wrong with the two-state solution? I mean, when the United Nations first partitioned Palestine to create Israel, it was more or less equal volumes of land. It was equivalent, basically contiguous areas of land, and the Palestinians were perfectly happy with that. And then Israel just started grabbing more and more of the land until there's hardly anything of Palestine left. And you can understand why the Palestinians are very upset about that. Now you've got Donald Trump coming on in with his deal of the century that is demanding up front that Palestinians surrender their right of return, which they were promised not just by the United Nations, but even by the government of the newly formed Israel. And now Israel's trying to renege on that promise.
I'm not saying there's not a lot of politics involved in it. I'm really not. And the only reason I maybe am a little more biased towards Israel is because my mother was a Jew.
Okay.
What I am saying is I look at some of these screaming Muslim preachers, whatever you call them, imams, and what they're saying is not conducive to peace over there. They're really not. And I've read the Quran. I've read all three versions, the one that's been sanitized for the West, and the two versions that are out there that were actually translated directly from the Middle East language. Anyhow, that was directly translated without being sanitized and taking all the bad verses out. There's a lot of really bad things said in there about both Christians and Jews and non-believers in Islam. Yeah. And they preach that, and I know they preach that, okay? I'm not saying that the Jews aren't preaching something totally different. They're, preaching that they're the chosen people and all that. But how can I, as a very almost unbiased observer, because I say I tilt a little bit towards the Jews, that doesn't mean Israel, how can I listen to some of that crap that they spew and some of the crap that these guys are getting on the internet and spewing when you say, gee, I wish there was peace, and they come out and say, well, the only peace is going to be when we run all the Jews into the ocean. I mean, how can that?
Well, you've had Jews who said exactly the same thing about the Muslims, and for that matter, going back to the Crusades, you had the Christians saying exactly the same thing. Here's the issue that you need to get out of your head, okay? Israel is not defending itself. It is the aggressor. And all you need to do is look at the maps of Israel and Palestine from the time of Israel's creation to the present. And you will see that it is Israel is the aggressor, and it's the Palestinians who are trying to defend themselves.
So here's my question again, and I'm just asking because it's the Jewish thing to do. You ask a lot of questions. So when the Palestinians send these barrages of missiles in, and I have no doubt in my mind that they're doing this, my buddy wouldn't lie to me. It's like he said, I just want peace. He said, I'll help anybody that needs help. I just want peace. He's there. His brothers are there.
Yeah, well, Israel and Gaza are shooting missiles at each other right now, and I wish they would stop.
Exactly.
Okay, but you see, you've got your events out of order. There was that first missile, which apparently Palestine is saying that was launched by mistake. Then Israel retaliated, okay, and then Gaza fired back, and that's how it got going. It's not like Gaza launched the first missile and then uncorked a whole bunch more. They were responding to Israel's retaliation. But
Michael,
remember what Gandhi said?
I'm sorry.
An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and soon the whole world is blind and toothless. Again, Israel is the aggressor. They always have been. Look at all the illegal settlements in the West Bank. They're constantly stealing the Palestinians' land. The Palestinians are the defenders. Israel is the aggressor. Anyway, Mark, we've got to let you go. We're almost out of time for this segment, and I need to switch over to Jack in California. Aloha, Jack. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha. Thank you for taking my call. I wanted to interject with this gentleman and engage him, but apparently maybe he is still listening. And what I'd ask is let's be cognizant of the 1933 Transfer Agreement and the Balfour Declaration, what created Israel. Furthermore, let him address the Greater Israel Project and their initiative. What have they been doing? Right? They've been expanding throughout the Middle East, and they're using their proxy wars through Great Britain and the United States military in order to accomplish that, and then essentially establishing World War III via immigration to Western Europe, the United States, with all these displaced peoples through culture clash, like Sharia law, Muslims, and sub-Saharan South Africans who are living in the bush. So this guy really Nevertheless, I just wanted to end with that. I'll let you interject, but they want to control the narrative and they want to rationalize their actions, and that's as simple as that. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, I was listening to Netanyahu was talking about the Golan, and he was saying that we captured the Golan in a defensive war. There's nothing defensive about it. Israel's the aggressor. The United States is the aggressor. And it's silly for anybody to try and pretend otherwise. Like I said, go back to the maps of Israel and Palestine, starting from when it was first created to the present, and you'll see who is pushing who off the map.
Absolutely. And the map's Israel is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. If you look at it every decade, it expands. It's essential that this guy's calling in and he's offering his narrative, his perception on the matter, and really what it's a representation of is the thinking of common Jew, whether they convert to Christianity or not, because a lot of these churches are also Zionist-run
Jack,
churches.
I got to let you go. I'm sorry. We've got to take a break for commercials. I got to let you go. Thank you for the phone call. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And Bayer stock sinks after a second court rules the weed killer causes cancer, glyphosate. And Bayer shares plunged more than 12%. So that one drop wiped out almost $8 billion from Bayer's market value. Now, Monsanto apparently is asking the Trump EPA to okay a new pesticide they're bringing on called dicamba. And like glyphosate, it works together with genetically modified seeds so that, in theory, the plants grown from the genetically modified seeds will not be harmed by the dicamba, but other plants will. The problem is this dicamba is very light, very fine. It can get caught up in the wind and get blown onto neighboring farm fields where it would kill the plants there, unless, of course, they were being forced to buy Monsanto's GMO seeds. So apparently Nathan Donnelly, a senior scientist with the Center for Biological Diversity, is out there saying use of this dangerous, uncontrollable toxin should be banned, not expanded. With millions of acres of crops, orchards, and natural areas already harmed by this volatile herbicide, Trump's EPA should reject Monsanto's self-serving request to dramatically escalate its use. We're going to have to be really careful about the food supply, not just for this year, but probably for the next 3 years. This massive flooding from all the snow that we had this last year, that stuff that everybody said we were never going to see again. We had a lot of it. It's melted. It's just devastating the farms and ranches throughout the Midwest. Apparently, something like 1 million calves have drowned. And so food is going to be in short supply this year. All right, let's take another phone call. Slim in Canada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you fine. You're on the air.
All right, great. I just wanted to call, as you know, about the Middle East. You had that call earlier that was somewhat defending Israel, and he's saying how he has a buddy over there, and his buddy obviously has been conditioned, right, as most people there that have been conditioned to think that, these people are bad and we're good and this and this. There's always the alpha and the omega, and then you have
Israel.
Oh, of course. And as a person that lived in Lebanon myself, I'd like him to maybe look into what Israel has done to Lebanon in the last, I don't know how many years, how the Lebanese property has gone from, it used to be 10,000 this and this square meters, and now it's a lot less. So he might want to look into that, as well as a few bombs onto the southern village of Kama. They dropped bombs onto one UN building, killed about 360 people, women and children, just three men, and the rest were women and children. The village had to rebuild. 3 years later, same thing, bombed the same UN building. You would think they learned, maybe we would put some anti-bomb stuff over the UN building, but no, they just laid out the whole village again. So these men had to rebuild, right, and do all that over again. This is what, I have nothing against Israel or the Jews or anything, or Hebrews or any, because there's a lot of Arabs. There's a lot of Arab people that live in Israel, and they're perfectly fine, right? And there's a lot of Christians and this and that live in Israel, and they live perfectly fine lives. But the Palestinians are treated like, pardon my French, crap. I mean, I'm trying to, keep it good for the radio.
Well, I appreciate that.
Oh, okay. I thought I lost you there for a second.
No, I'm still here. Here's what it comes down to, okay? How is a war defensive when it results with an increase in your territory?
Absolutely. They're not defending themselves.
No.
They're not they're not the people that, but they're labeled that way. And if you talk, there's a huge double standard. I've seen it. I've been banned from Facebook multiple times because of it. You say one thing about white people, hey, it's no problem. Say anything about Muslims or Jews, good luck. You're castrated. They'll ban you as fast as possible. And I've experienced that personally. And unfortunately, what can you do? It's unfortunately the way it is. If it was up to me, it would be like, I would say, listen, it would be like, I would be like the father to two children. I would say, listen, you just take your side and you take your side, and let's just live the rest of our lives in harmony. Let's draw out the lines and this and that. I know there's no the two-state solution and this and this and this. In my personal opinion right now, it's just like with how we the white people slaughtered a bunch of Native Americans to create North America. But you know what? Canada's a beautiful country as a result of it. So I'm not, and this and that. What's done is done, as far as I'm concerned. What's done is done. What happened, happened. Okay, yes, we lost. Our side lost a lot. This and this. Even with respect to Lebanon, I'm willing to say, okay, just draw your boundaries. Say this is your country, and we're good. I can hear the music.
Yep, I'm going to have to let you go.
I guess you're probably going to let me go, eh?
Break.
Thanks, Mike.
We'll be right back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, we've been talking about the opioid crisis. And we know that the pharmaceutical companies pushed it because it was a big moneymaker. And it's hard to see a moral difference between these guys in the white coats at the pharmacies and the guys in the blue jeans down there on the street corner, because that's all it's about, pushing the stuff. Now, a lot of attention has been pushed on Purdue Pharmaceuticals, which makes OxyContin, and they've been the main target so far in lawsuits. But apparently, court documents are showing attorney generals are casting a wider net, drawing more attention to Johnson & Johnson's role in the global opioid market. And apparently, the first big trial of the opioid epidemic is set to begin in May in Oklahoma, and it will set the stage for similar litigation in other states. So apparently there's going to be a lot of confidential documents released, but apparently Johnson & Johnson was a main supplier to everybody else who was doing opioid production. Okay, let's go back to the phones. Tom in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Michael, how you doing? Good evening. Good afternoon. Yeah, Michael, first off, this guy Avenatti, I don't know if you heard with he's trying to extort Nike for $20 million, and then the lawyer for Jesse Smollett is going to be part of the deal. I think he's going to go down too. That's just the evening news that's going on as far as Avenatti, that criminal, what he was trying to do with Trump and the Mueller crap. But Michael, I just want to know. I know we talked last week to you, and I want to ask you. Now that this Mueller investigation's over and Trump came out clean, which I knew he was the whole time, I'm wondering what's going to happen now, Michael, with the immigration problem. Are they going to actually? Is Trump going to literally have people that are aiding, colluding, sedating our country with illegal immigration? Are they going to be arrested?
Well,
are these people going to start being arrested?
The linkage between the two is rather thin, but I think what you're saying, now that Trump is free of the Mueller investigation, and of course there are still other investigations going on, including one from the Southern District of New York, but now that he's free of the big one, the Russian collusion, I think a lot of people are hoping Trump is going to stand up and start being the president we thought we all voted into the Oval Office. I'm withholding judgment until I see what's going to happen. But again, for all the talk about border wall, the border wall isn't getting built. The Pentagon identified $12 billion in funds that they can use, and I'm not seeing the border wall get built. I'm seeing a lot of nattering and gromishing and, Trump's declaration of a national emergency and all these other people coming on back and saying, well, it's not really a national emergency. And it's just...
Well, Michael... I can tell you this: my sister lives in Phoenix, and she told me on their news broadcast over in Arizona, all the other stations over there, they're literally dropping these people off in Phoenix. And where are these people going to? Safe houses? Where are they going? What is the government doing? Do they watch where these people go? I mean, they don't even know what their names are hardly, and I mean, they can be fictitiously with their names and commit all kinds of crimes and get away with it. And now you got this guy, and I don't know if you heard the case, what's going on with Molly Tibbetts, Michael, but the Mexican that murdered her, he wants an all-Mexican jury.
Yes, I had heard that.
Have you heard that? This guy wants an all-Mexican jury in Iowa.
Yeah.
I mean, they're devastated with the floods. They got hit horrifically in the floods. I was listening to that on the news today. But then this guy, this Mexican that kills Molly Tibbetts, wants a Mexican jury. What is that? Michael, we have become a third world in this country. That's absolutely true. Look at Los Angeles. Look at all the gangs all over the place. And my sister's telling me they're dropping these illegals off left and right in Phoenix, Arizona?
Yes.
If that ain't an invasion, I don't know what the hell you call it. I mean,
yeah, it's a slow-motion invasion. And as far as where they're going, they're probably going into the local Hispanic community where they're being absorbed, if you will, and given housing, at least temporarily. And then they displace Americans in the labor force, and yeah,
Absolutely.
It's a takeover.
It's a takeover. Look, Michael, South Florida, Dade County. There's not one white male on the Miami-Dade County Commission. Broward County's got 5 left. They had that in the Fort Lauderdale Sentinel about 2 months ago. They had an article about that. Finally, they put an article. I mean, this not coming here to compliment you. They're coming to take your lunch and eat your job. I mean, they're trying to take your job, eat your lunch, and wipe you out. And it's funny, Michael. I don't know if you saw a chance to see what Israel. You saw Netanyahu today in the White House with Trump.
Yes.
Okay. What is the first thing Netanyahu gets up there and starts speaking on the lectern was? Oh, we're going to protect Israel at all costs, and we'll go after them. Well, here Trump's trying to do the same thing in the media here, and his left-wing communists are trying to stop the guy. But in Israel, they got a free pass to build a wall around their whole country that's paid by American taxpayers' money. And you know what? When you don't see 5 million Muslims sneaking into Israel,
nope,
it'd wipe them out. They'd be totally wiped out. It wouldn't be a nation anymore. He'd be part of greater Syria or Iran. But here's the point. The wall is one thing, but the Congress will not act, Michael, on any laws on the books that say if you come here illegally, you will be crossed back to that border. You poured it out of here like David Dwight Eisenhower did. You remember the operation he did back in the 50s, correct?
Yeah, Operation Wetback.
Okay, and he got over 2.5 million illegals out of here in a 3-year period. I believe it was from 1955 to 58. I think it was a 3-year period. I read the whole article years ago, and he got all these illegals out of here, and he used I think they were using yellow bird buses at the time, the bluebird bus, whatever, the yellow buses, the school buses, and they deported almost 3 million. So you can't do it now? I don't understand.
Well, the Democrats want the illegals to be here, and especially after the humiliation of the Mueller report, you can count on the Democrats in Congress will oppose adamantly anything Donald Trump wants. At this point, they're willing to wreck the country rather than allow Donald Trump to have any kind of a victory. That includes on the immigration issue.
Michael, I agree with you. And you know what? I got to say one more thing. I'll let you go. The lady in Oakland, the mayor in Oakland, California, Michael, I said this months and months ago. I called a few radio stations, and I told all the other hosts, I said, listen, if that lady's not being arrested by Trump, then you know what? It's like hands off. Because that lady right there, when she was telling them that the ICE was coming to get them, she should have been arrested for sedation, aiding and including an illegal invasion. And they didn't do nothing to her. Well, I forgot her name, the lady in Oakland, the mayor. She should have been arrested right there on the spot. And by them not arresting her for aiding an illegal invasion and incursion of our country, I'm saying to myself, you know what? I know who's running the government, because they're allowing a woman to give a heads up to a raid that was supposed to be happening that never was able to happen because she tipped them off. Nobody. What did Trump do to her?
That should have resulted in an obstruction charge.
Absolutely. And by them allowing her to get off the hook, Michael, I'll tell you right now, I don't know what's going to happen the rest of it. I believe everything you're saying. The United States is under, I don't know, it's going to be a coup or something. I don't know what the hell is going to happen. It's unbelievable. It's amazing what's happening. It's amazing. And, you know, and then you got Molly Tibbetts, and you got all these other women getting murdered by Kate Steinle. The guy was deported 5 times.
Yes.
And, Michael, I was wondering, did the Steinle family ever sue the state of California for that?
I'm not sure that they would have standing to sue, but I don't know. We should find a lawyer and find out. 5 times he's deported out of the city of San Francisco. I mean, I'm wondering if Molly Tibbetts' family can sue for her being murdered by an illegal that had no papers or whatever the heck he was in Iowa. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And there's not a crisis at the border? Who are these people kidding, these Democrats? I mean, these imbeciles. And you got that shifty shift. And I don't know if you had a chance to see Mark Levin's show the other night, Michael, but that was pretty heavy what he was saying. Levin was really hitting it home, I can tell you. Good.
I'm not a great fan of his, but he was pretty on the money there. So, I don't know. Now that Trump's off this Mueller crap, hopefully he can do his job as president, and he can really start deporting all these people who shouldn't be here. You come to this country, you got to come here legally. Not illegally and get $74,000 a head. People don't make that half that money working, Michael, in this country. $74,000 per illegal per year.
Yep.
That's almost unbelievable to me.
Huge cost to the nation here. The problem is that Trump is going to have to get the laws changed, because the way it works now is these people can be deported, but only after they're allowed to have a hearing to plead for asylum. And the system is so log-jammed and backed up, it can literally be years before they get that hearing, during which they can basically do whatever they want inside this country, including vanish from any view. So it's a totally messed up system. But Trump would have to get that system changed. But again, because of the humiliation of the Mueller report, we can count on the Democrats in Congress to absolutely oppose anything Donald Trump wants from now on.
Okay, Michael, let me ask you. These people are coming here, they don't speak English, but there's a whole giant continent down in South America. Why don't they go down there to, I guess, like Colombia or Peru or something? Why are they coming here?
Well, because Colombia and Peru have strict border controls, and they're not handing out free stuff.
Exactly. It's all about the money. Look at that's another interesting subject right now with Cuba and Venezuela. The Russian soldiers are going into Venezuela. I hear all over the news today, and I don't know what the hell they're saying anymore. It's off the charts, man.
Yeah, well, apparently they've also set up an S-300 missile battery around one of the military bases near Caracas.
I think I told you last week, Michael, before you can even go into Venezuela, you're going to have to take care of Cuba. It's a two-pronged deal, because if you remember, 40,000 Cubans are around Maduro. So before you can even, take out Venezuela's military complex, you got to go after Cuba, because they're the ones that are propping the whole thing up. So,
well,
I don't know how Trump's going to deal with it.
I don't know. Looking at a map, I'm not sure that's an absolute given. Anyway, listen, Tom, we're going to let you go because we're getting short on time
Thank
and
you,
the
sir.
phone lines are loading up. So we're going to switch over to Stuart in Dade County. Aloha, Stuart. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike. You know, I don't think it's it becomes any surprise. Donald Trump's not going to do anything. Donald Trump could have destroyed his enemies by releasing the House intel documents. He wouldn't do it. He made all kinds of excuses. He's got Rosenstein in there. Rosenstein signed off on the Pfizer warrants. Still there.
Yes.
Okay? And then, of course, you mentioned what's going on at the border. The guy is he's a total BS artist. And but my second point is, even if Donald Trump was a good guy, the system is so corrupt that the only way anything is going to get done is either possibly by a collapse like you talk about,
yep,
or if we had a real leader in the office. These are the situations that require a military coup. I know for Americans that's a strange thing to say, but this whole system has to be reorganized. And how can you go to the Congress, which is in the hands of your enemy, and will continue to be in your enemy because they get the money to run, and nobody else does, and everybody else is kept out. So your thoughts?
Well, you know, you've pretty much nailed it on the head here, and that's why earlier I said I withhold judgment until I see what Trump is actually going to do. Yeah, he's been co-opted by the system, the deep state. He's going along with the war agenda. I mean, this guy campaigned on ending the wars, but then so did Obama back in 2008. And we're still fighting all these wars of aggression, of invasion, of regime change. And it's horribly disappointing. And if Trump doesn't do something about that border, it's going to wreck this place economically. Here's why he's got to move expeditiously on this. We have all these illegals pouring into this country, going into a period of serious food shortages because of the massive flooding in the Midwest. Those two lines are going to cross. Hungry mouths coming from up south, okay, and less food coming from the Midwest. When those lines cross, you will have rioting in the streets.
Yeah. One other thing, and then I'll sign off. Is there was also a student suicide at Parkland.
I think it was the second one. Was the second one?
Yeah. I thought it was one you had up there about Sandy Hook, but I think there was 3 incidences in the past week or so in Parkland. But I see at least one. So,
yeah, there were 2 at Parkland that I'm aware of, and then there was a suicide involving a Sandy Hook parent. In fact, it involved the guy who was videotaped laughing as he came out of the building. Then when he came up to the mics, he just had to work himself down to being sad for the cameras. So everybody had him pegged as a phony.
Wow. All right, Mike, I'll let somebody else get on. Thanks.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Raleigh in Minnesota. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I don't think it was Robbie Parker who was parent. It was another gentleman, but I don't really know. I don't have the news story in front of me when it comes to the suicide, that Sandy Hook parent suicide that happened within 2 weeks. It's absolutely amazing. You know, I think Hogg is definitely going to exploit these suicides going on. We're going to hear a whole media input about it in the next coming weeks, but that's not a reason why I call, Michael. I don't know if you knew this, maybe got lost in the shuffle with all the media headlines, but the spy master, Ruffy Aton, passed away at 92.
Yeah, I did see that. I did see that.
And I just wanted to comment. I know that you're got a little bit of time left. I wanted to mention that he's known for 2 basic things to the public, for catching SS officer Adolf Eichmann in Buenos Aires, and he was very involved with the Promise software being handed over to the Israeli government, and very influential to the Iran-Contras.
Yep. Well, it was an interesting career, definitely. All right. Well, listen, Raleigh, we're coming up on a commercial break, so I'm going to let you go and get back to some news here. Okay. Again, major flooding in the U.S. Midwest. And once again, because we've been down this road before, nuclear power plants are at risk of being flooded. The plants, at least right now, continue to operate at full power. And this resulting in the potential for unnecessary, extremely high-risk accidents. This is from Kevin Camps, the radioactive waste watchdog at the organization Beyond Nuclear. And we went through the same issue a few years back. One would have thought since then additional levies and other safety measures would have been implemented. Not so. We'll be right back with the last segment of our program. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And we're talking about this horrible flooding that is taking place throughout the Midwest. It is hitting the farms. It's drowning early planted crops. It is killing livestock. So there are going to be serious food shortages in the next 2 years. And again, it just makes it all the more foolhardy to be allowing a flood of illegal immigrants, hungry mouths, into this country. It's a disaster waiting to happen. And I'm appalled that nobody in the bowels of power are looking at this and saying, yeah, this is a recipe for a major problem. But the Democrats are out there saying, we need those illegal immigrant voters. We'll find some way to feed them. You know, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Oh, we'll just pay for it. This country is in serious, serious trouble right now. Mother Nature just yapped all over our food supply. And millions of additional hungry mouths are pouring across that border. All right, somebody has done a study on Google's search algorithm and its influence in the 2018 U.S. midterm election. And this is Dr. Robert Epstein of the American Institute for Behavioral Research and Technology, basically saying that Google's biased search algorithm actually flipped seats in the 2018 U.S. midterm elections. And this researcher found the search engine's dramatically biased results could have shifted over 78 million votes to the Democrats. Now, I don't think Google should have that kind of power over our society. Anyway, we have all this banning of conservatives, and the liberals think that's fine. You know, as long as it's a private company, it's perfectly okay to ban conservatives. Mind you, these are the same people who go ballistic when a baker refuses to make a gay wedding cake. But it's just out there. They're influencing the elections here. Now, here's a story. This one came out of CNN. Not that we believe anything they say anymore, but it makes the claim that the internet is radicalizing white men and calling on big tech to be doing more. And they're basically talking about the New Zealand Christchurch shooting and saying, well, you know, he was radicalized by the internet, and we've got to save people from the internet. So, again, we're seeing more and more of this idea of closing down social media, closing down peer-to-peer. They want to turn the internet into just another for-pay content delivery service. Anyway, there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here, get something useful done with the rest of the day. Please stay tuned for John Stedmuller. I'm sure that he has lots of interesting things to share with you. Please take what you learn here and share it with your friends, family, co-workers, and students. Please donate to Republic Broadcasting. After this embarrassment of the Mueller report, corporate media is going to declare total war on the independent media. That's us. We need your help. So does whatreallyhappened.com. Have a good evening. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.